Over the years I've done tests of a number of modern day boomboxes, and it's fair to say that none of them have really been any good. I mean, some of them embarrassing even. Compared to models of the 1980s and 90s, the top quality ones that are available then, the modern day ones are just not really a patch on those. But I think I'm partially to blame for that, because I've been looking for a boombox with a kind of historical aspect to it. The fact it can still play cassettes in the modern age, and the fact is nobody's making a decent cassette mechanism anymore. The one that is being made is cheap and lacking, and they're not going to put that in a quality device. So by specifying a cassette deck, I'm immediately kind of getting the quality of the device down to a level that's just these throwaway things. So what if I forget about the requirement for a cassette deck? I want a modern day boombox, but one that has a CD player in it, because those are all right. Radio, perhaps digital radio, Bluetooth, but yeah, no cassette deck. What's available now? I mean, there's no reason those models that are available with those features in now can't outperform the models of the past. I mean, speakers have improved. Small speakers can provide a much better bass response than they could back in the day, and the whole thing can be much more power efficient. We can run it off a rechargeable lithium cell rather than 8D cells. So with those requirements in mind, I went looking to see what I could get nowadays in a modern day boombox of a decent quality with a big output on it. You know, I mean, proper boombox, not your little handbag type things, you know, boombox. So I started my search online looking for a good modern day CD boombox, and it turns out it's slim pickings. Most of the devices that you find out there under boombox are just Bluetooth speakers with a handle. Well, I've got a Bluetooth speaker with a handle here. I don't really class this as a boombox, but if you look on a website like CNET, they've got a list of the best boomboxes for 2024, and all of those are just Bluetooth speakers with a handle. I don't just want a Bluetooth speaker. There are plenty of those out there. Yeah, you're spoiled for choice, but I'm narrowing things down a little bit more. I want to be able to play physical media on my device. And yeah, I mean, I'm old-fashioned, yeah, fine, but so are boomboxes in a way. I mean, if you go right back to the beginning, the boombox was created when somebody put a cassette with a radio and some big speakers. I mean, they didn't really call them boomboxes initially. Portable radio cassettes, portable stereo, ghetto blasters. But yeah, over the years, we've come to call them boomboxes. That term has now been in use for over 40 years. So we settled down on boomboxes. But yeah, going back to what a boombox was initially, well, before they existed, people had a portable radio. No one would have ever called a portable transistor radio that ran on batteries a boombox. But yeah, when you stick a cassette with it, perhaps add some stereo speakers, although there were mono boomboxes, then that's a boombox. So I think it's the addition of the physical media playback that changed the radio into the boombox. So then, of course, you have twin cassettes. Over the years, you have cassettes with CDs, perhaps mini disc as well. You might drop the cassettes off some of the models, but still, you've always got that ability to play back physical media as well as the radio from a battery-powered device with decent speakers on it. Now, of course, these things have changed over the years, and nowadays, if you went looking for a boombox, you find a little tinny, pathetic thing, not the boomboxes of old. But still, I want to kind of go back to that. I think, yeah, it should be playing physical media. It should have big, massive speakers. It should be portable, run off batteries, but be portable in the sense like you don't really want to carry this thing around because it's ridiculous, like this one that I've got behind me here. I mean, these were heavy things. The whole boombox thing, it's got a boom to it, not just a little tiny thing like that. So yeah, this is what I've been looking for. CD, radio, on a big old thing that you can hardly lug around, but it runs off batteries and it provides a lot of boom. Well, I found something. Let me show you what I got. Can I just say, it's the hottest day of the year. I've got a studio here with a load of lights surrounding me, and I'm lugging this thing around, and it's heavy. But I've got to say, I'm appreciative of the fact it's heavy, because that shows we've got a bit of family history going through to this model. I mean, it's a JVC for one thing. The giant M90 I had on the screen behind me before, that's JVC going all the way back, and it's the same company all the way through. Yeah, they merged with Kenwood a number of years ago, but it's not like one of these things where you see the Sansui badge stuck on something that someone's bought from AliExpress. No, this is a JVC product. It's the RVNB300DAB. The DAB stands for the Digital Audio Broadcasting Standard used in the UK for the digital radio. I'm sure it's got FM on here as well. In other countries, of course, the specs will be slightly different. Got to mention the price though. Supposedly it's on sale. here in the UK at least it was £250, reduced from £350, but if you want to run it off batteries, well, you need to pay another £50 for a lithium battery pack. So I bought that as well. Hopefully it's inside the box because I've only got the one package here, but there you go. That is what we bought. Let's see if it's any good. Now, just before I open the box, can I say how much I appreciate them calling this a boom blaster, because it solves a problem. You see, whenever in the past I've made a video about a portable stereo and I've called it a boombox, loads of people will tell me we didn't call those boomboxes, we called those ghetto blasters. In fact, it happened so much I made this video about it, and that video is called Boom Blasters. Boombox? We used to call those ghetto blasters.
Everyone knows, and no one cares.
And I always thought it was a bit weird that people were insisting I use a 44-year-old word to describe one of these devices rather than a 43-year-old word, because the 43-year-old version was too modern. Anyway, Boom Blaster solves that. Everyone's happy, or no one's happy. And I'm happy to see from this packing slip that was inside the top of the box, we've got the rechargeable battery included in here. You can see they've opened up the cardboard box and it's sat inside there. So let's get into this. Now, you won't get a much better demonstration than this as to why anyone who's expecting everyone everywhere to use the same word to describe one of these as they use, well, they're onto a bit of a fool's errand, because JVC are using 3 different terms for this. We saw on the outer box they were calling it a boom blaster. On the packing slip they call it a boom box. On the box they call it a mobile hi-fi system. I think that's a pretty good term for one of these. Carrying on with it though, mobile hi-fi system with powered subwoofer, CD, USB, DAB/FM tuner and Bluetooth audio streaming. 60 watts, aux in, guitar in and mic in, and multi-effect speaker illumination. Well, it certainly sounds up to the job. Let's see if its sound is up to the job. Okay, so here's what's inside the box. We've got a Euro power lead and a UK one. Remote control, I didn't even know it had a remote. We've got a strap for carrying it and the instructions in there, but let's just have a look inside the main thing. Okay, well, it's an all black plastic design. It's really a rather subdued appearance when it's powered off. I think it could have done with a few little flourishes of silver or something, but that said, it feels really substantial. That is really solid, thick plastic. It's not your creaky, thin kind of stuff. I'm interested in how this CD lid operates. I haven't seen that opened on any of the pictures, so let's just have a look. Now, sometimes it's hard to get the scale of these things on a video, but that is a lot larger than a CD. We've got a catch on the front here which we twist to the left, and there we go, it springs open. Just your normal CD mechanism. I'll be interested to see if this machine supports CD text, and let's just close that. Yeah, closes with a nice firm clunk, so that's good. Oh, and of course we've got the pleasure that comes along with buying something new. That's it. Take it off. Right, before I do anything else, I'm going to install this battery pack. So it's a 5000 milliamp hour, 14.4 volt pack. Quite a substantial thing. We've got the instructions with it there. Connects up like so, and then we've got this for pulling it out with. I could probably do with attaching that strap to it next as well, because it would make it easier to manoeuvre around. Although, on the sides here, these can be used as handles for carrying it. There's, of course, one either side. So we'll just spin it around. Just marry these two things together and pop this in here. So the power input's on the left. To the right of that we've got 2 1/4-inch jacks. The left hand one of those is the mic input and the right one is the guitar input, and both of these have adjustable levels. And the only other item of note on the back here is the antenna, and let's just see, yeah, that's fully adjustable. The remote just uses one AAA battery, which was included, but one thing I've noticed about this, it appears that this remote control is essential for accessing some of the more complicated features of the device. We've got a total of 21 buttons on here, many of which have legends for functions which are not shown on the control panel on the main unit. On the front here we've got the usual controls, 5 buttons either side for things like play, pause, track skip forward and back. We've got a knob in the middle here, we've got a bass button at the top. But yes, if you want to access everything, you've got to take this along with you. And unfortunately, they haven't included a handy storage compartment on the main unit. Right, well, I've left it charging overnight, so I think that should be sufficient. Now you'll notice perhaps the screen there showing at 9:04, that's 9 hours since I powered it up. That isn't the correct time. It will pull through the time, I'm quite sure, once I switch on the DAB radio. So we might as well do that first of all and tune it in. Oh, blue speakers. Fancy. Now this light button, I believe, changes the colours. Let's have a look. Oh yeah, going all out here, aren't we? And it's scanning for stations.
Find the latest travel news at absoluteradio.co.uk.
The forward and back here that I would have thought would jump me through the stations are going through presets, and there aren't any presets because I haven't set them up yet. So it looks like I'm going to have to resort to the remote control. Right, yeah, I've just checked. The instructions tell me that you can't change the station on the device itself. You have to use the remote control, but then once you've used it to get to the station you like, you can store it in a memory, and then on the device you can go through the memories that you've stored. Not the most convenient system. So I'm going through the radio stations. I'm pointing at the infrared receiver at the bottom, and you can see on the screen there, very slowly, it's working its way through the different stations. There's perhaps 100 or so that it's picked up, so it's going to take me a while to go through the whole list, but luckily I'm only going up to G for greatest hits. There we go. Right, so now I've got a tune to greatest hits, and now it's playing. And now I then press the memory button on the remote control, and I choose where I want to store it. Hold on, there we go, position number 1. Right, so the next thing I want to do is store history. I've got to work my way through them again. So you can see this is just going to take an age. Now, of course, once you've done it once, you've done it. I understand that, but it could be a lot easier than this. So you can see I've got the source button on the left here to go between the various different inputs and features. So if we move to FM there, we've got to do the same thing with storing presets, because again, this is just moving between presets that are currently empty. But let's move on to using a CD. I'm still buying CDs, as you can see. This one's shrink wrapped. This is Breaker's Revenge, a compilation of songs used in the early days of hip hop. Most of the CDs I buy nowadays are compilations, but I find it the best way to get them, and it's much easier than getting a load of records. A couple of CDs rather than 6 records is a lot cheaper often as well. So let's just press play on that. Oh, hold on, we've got to move across to the CD. Now we can press play. And I'll see if it's got any CD text on this. I don't expect it will do. I don't know if this CD has it. I'll check that in a moment. But let's just get this one going. I'm going to have to skip through it, of course, so that I don't get any content matches. But let's just have a quick listen. Okay, let's have a bit of a play around with this bass button. So I'll just go back a track, because that one had quite a bit of bass on it. And we'll set it to level 1. Okay, and now level 2. Yeah, definitely a difference there. And you can also just have it off, so it's just a regular amount of bass. Yeah, that's working really well. I think it's got a good quality of sound to that. I'm going to test it out with my usual bass test, which is a track from Dead Prez. It's hip hop. That's got a very heavy bass line on it. So let's just have a go with that. Yeah, definitely feel that. And that's with the bass boost off. So let's have a go. Okay, and then we've got EQs as well. So if we just go to this, once the bass is on, the bass boost is on, the EQ disappears. So we have to turn that off, and then we can get into the EQ. So you got jazz, pop, classic, flat, and rock. So rock's a good place to start, and it's honestly not got a limited amount of bass in that mode, but once you stick it to bass number 2, it really picks up. Okay, rather than use the same old YouTube audio library stuff, this time I put some music on here created by a chap called Andre. He's helped the channel out in the past. I'll put a link to his information in the video description. And as well as his music, I've put some file type tests on here so we can run through those and see what this device is capable of playing. Now also down at the bottom here, you'll notice we've got 3.5mm auxiliary input and headphone output. Okay, additional options that I can find present on the remote control. Well, starting at the top here, we've got an echo button, which will no doubt interact with the microphone. Perhaps we'll test that out later on. As well as a sleep countdown timer, we can access alarms on here and set them using this button. We've got access to a memory and repeat and random play functions for the tracks. Down at the bottom here, we've got a mute button as well. And we've got also access to drill down through the various folders, whereas on the main device itself, it just seemed to play through all the tracks one after the other. Now, I mentioned I was doing a file compatibility test with this. I've got various different audio files on here, MP3, WAV, OGG Vorbis, AIFF, etc. And it would only play the MP3. And I thought that was a little bit strange. Well, I've had a look in the back of the manual here in the specs, and it does say under the USB devices, playable files MP3. So it can only play MP3s off a FAT16 or FAT32 format USB stick. And the bit rates go up to 320 kilobits a second. Okay, returning to the question of CD text. Does this device support it? I very much doubt it, but it doesn't mention it either way in the manual, so let's try and find out. We can see from this CD we're playing at the moment, we've just got the track number and the time on there. However, there's no guarantee that this CD has CD text on it. There's no mention of it anywhere on the disc itself or on the box, so let's play it in something else to see whether or not it does. Right, well, if the data's present, it'll show up on this machine. So just keep an eye on the screen here. There we go. CD text is showing up, and we're getting the title of the album coming across the screen here. As well as the album title, of course, we've got the individual track titles as well as the artist names for those, and I find that very useful on compilations. It's just a shame there are so few machines that support CD text nowadays, because the information is there on an awful lot of the modern compilation CDs. One thing not mentioned in the manual is it does have a bit of a CD memory of sorts. At the moment I'm playing James Brown, Get on the Good Foot. Okay, so let's just go to a different input. We'll go to the DAB radio. It'll take a second to tune it. Okay, now we'll just take out the CD and then pop it back in again. And that James Brown one was track 4. But we don't have to jump to track 4, because if we just start the CD mode, once it's read the CD, it'll go straight back into where it left off, which I think is a nice little feature. As I say, not mentioned in the manual, and then again, there's an awful lot of things that aren't mentioned in the manual. There's a lot of different languages in here, but it's a matter of finding some of these things out yourself. Now, the only other thing we've got to test here is the auxiliary input and the microphone input. So we'll do the aux in first. Oh, hold on, I forgot the Bluetooth as well, so we've got 3 things to test. We'll start with the auxiliary in. Well, it's working just fine, as you'd expect it would. There's not an awful lot could go wrong with a wire going from a headphone output to an auxiliary input. Of course, when you're using the headphone output, you've also got the ability to adjust the level of the input, but really this normally accepts a line level. But yeah, that's working just fine. Now, since I've got this attached, it does give me the opportunity to use my stereo test. I'd got one of these on that USB stick, but it was only a WAV file, and this can't play those. So we can test it out here just to check the speakers are wired up the right way around. I'm quite sure they are this time, but we'll just double check.
Right, left, left, right, left.
Yeah, that sounds right to me. You're listening through a mono lavalier, but yeah, the speakers are the right way round. Shocker. Right, next one, Bluetooth. So let's select the input on here, and that will no doubt put it into pairing mode. It's connected up, so let's pick something to play through this. Turn the volume up on here as well. Yeah, we're not getting any track information coming through on that display. It's just a very bare bones Bluetooth connection. I'll just look in the manual to see what specs it has. Yeah, so not a massive amount of specs here, but just at the top there, it's a 60 watt device, and the output is the same whether you're on the batteries or on the mains power. That's 2 times 30 watts. As far as the weight goes, it's 7.2 kilograms, but that is without the battery. The battery weighs 500 grams, which brings the total up to a total of 7.7 kilograms, which converts to 17 pounds. And whilst it's not mentioned on this page, the battery life is up to 14 hours. But returning back to the Bluetooth again, the Bluetooth is version 5.0 and it uses an A2 DP codec. Now, whilst we're on the subject of blue, let's just mention the lights that are inside the speakers. There are a total of 5 different settings for these. This is option number 1, which is just to have them light up in blue. They don't fade in and out, they don't colour cycle, it's just a blue circle, as you can see. The next setting you can access by pressing the light button on the device itself or on the remote control. Now this one goes around in a circle and it cycles through the various different colours that these are capable of displaying. Move on to the next one. This is number 3. So this goes from the bottom to the top and again cycles through the colours. Now unfortunately, none of these react to the audio. They're purely just set animations that do the same thing every time. Number 4 is a fade between the various different colours. That's perhaps my favourite of the lot, although I wish they didn't go completely out, they just faded between them without going completely dark, but still, there you go. And then the last one is to have the lights off, which I think makes the device look a bit dull. Right, and finally I'm going to test it out with a microphone. Now, don't worry, there's going to be no karaoke here, but I'm going to have to unplug my lavalier so you can hear the sound coming from these speakers rather than from this end. Okay, so I'm talking through the microphone now. It's going to sound a little bit odd on the recording because as well as my audio coming from these speakers here, it's also coming from me stood next to the camera. But just bear with it for a moment because I just want to show you a couple of features. The first thing to mention is the microphone volume control is located on the back of the device. The volume on the front here is currently switched all the way to the left. It's off. This, if I bring it up now, is going to play back what is currently being played from this USB stick. And of course you can therefore merge those two things together, or mix them I should say, and therefore you could have a bit of a karaoke session singing along with whatever is currently being played from the CD, the USB, etc. But if you bring it all the way down, then it's just acting as a PA device. Now, the other thing to do with that is if we want a PA device that's less intelligible, we can bring in the echo. The buttons on the remote will press echo number 1, so that is the first setting. Now that one, I think you can understand what I'm saying. There's a considerable amount of delay on there, but it's not a patch on echo level number 2, the final one, and the most ludicrous one. So let's switch that on. Right, so now we've got quite the delay on this. It's okay if I talk slowly, but the quicker I talk, the less intelligible it becomes, and then eventually I start sounding like someone who's doing announcements at a railway station. The next train to Manchester Piccadilly is at 3:30, the quiet carriage is towards the rear of the train, and the buffet car is towards the front. Make sure you have all your belongings with you when you board the train. Now, as well as normal CDs, it can play burnt CDs, of course, as well as CDs that are full of MP3s, as in the case of what's going on here at the moment. We're inside folder number 1, we're playing track 4, it's been playing for 30 odd seconds. One thing that isn't being shown at the bottom of the screen here, though, is the text information from the ID3 tag. Now, I'm pretty sure these files have it included in them, but for whatever reason, when I skip to the next track, it tells me that the ID3 information isn't present, and it just shows me the track number. Now, perhaps that's something I've done wrong. I don't normally burn CDs full of MP3s, but I've never had this issue before either. So yeah, as far as CDs with CD text go, it doesn't display those. It should display ID3 tags from MP3s on CDs, and then when you move across to the radio on RDS, of course it pulls through the text information from that on the FM band, and then when you move across to your digital radio to DAB, it displays the text information that goes along with those signals as well. Right, just a quick word or perhaps a rant about these controls on the front. I'm not a fan at all. This bit, well, I can let that one go. The volume control, it feels pleasant enough to the touch. I don't think it needs to be this large and in the centre, but that's neither here nor there. It could do with perhaps a clicker to give it more functionality, but yeah, we'll let that one have a pass. It's these that are the problem. I mean, we've got large buttons across the top, small ones at the bottom. There's no feeling between them to differentiate, so you have to have a look at which one is which. Plays over here, track forwards over there, track backs over there, stops over here. I mean, it doesn't really make very much sense at all. In addition to that, they're unpleasant to the touch. They require quite a bit of pressure to push them. They're clicky, wobbly, plasticky feeling things. And then in addition to that, I mean, how do you differentiate between these in the dark or in low light? And I'll give you a bit of a demonstration. Right, press pause now. Yeah, good luck with that one. Right, I'll just quickly show you the alarm function. You've got to program this from the remote control. And that's it, the alarm has now been saved. So you can have this as a rather large radio alarm clock. Now I've taken it outside so we've got a bit more room to swing it around, and I can show you on the front here we've got these two 10cm full range speakers, below which are bass ports, and then on either end beneath the handles there are a pair of 16cm subwoofers. Now, inevitably, some people will ask me, why didn't I take this apart? Well, I did try on this occasion, even though we all know what's going to be in here, a few speakers and a power supply and some circuit boards. But still, I went to the trouble of taking out all the screws that were marked up with a star. Those are the ones that you normally remove to take something apart. And it still was firmly shut together. After a bit of struggling, I decided I didn't want to risk damaging this thing, so I put those screws back in again. I then went looking on YouTube to see if there were any other videos about boom blasters being disassembled, and there is one on there where someone's tearing down an older model, and it seems you need to unscrew and remove those end subwoofers before the thing can open. But it also doesn't seem like it's very much fun doing that, and it doesn't look worthwhile, so I'm glad I didn't bother. Okay, final thoughts. Well, negatives first. The over-reliance on the remote control is the main issue for me, when it comes to tuning in the radio especially. Just to reiterate, the device itself, you can use the buttons on it to skip between the radio presets. But those radio presets have to be first put in using the remote control. I mean, I don't know why they did it that way, but they did. And then I thought, well, perhaps it doesn't really matter all that much, because yeah, it's a time-consuming pain in the neck to tune all your radio stations in, but once you've got them tuned in, yeah, it's done. But that's not really the case, is it? Because this is a portable device. So you're supposed to be able to pick this up, take it to a different location, and then turn on the radio, and you find that, no, hold on, in that area they've got different frequencies, you need to retune the whole thing. You need to make sure you take this along with you. Now, to make sure these two things always stay together, I've just stuck a little bit of Velcro on the top. So that's a simple solution to a silly problem, but you shouldn't really have to do that. I found the carrying strap to be pretty much useless. The cylindrical body of the boom blaster pulls it away from your torso and makes these straps slip off your shoulder, so it's much better to use the handles at either end to carry it instead. I think the looks are too subdued. I think this all black appearance is pretty dull. It could do with a few contrasting highlights. A proper boombox should draw your attention before it's even turned on. And we've mentioned the cheap, clicky plastic buttons that could have been laid out so much more logically, but it's not like JVC are new to this. They just need to look to their own back catalogue to see how you do a proper physical user interface. I also think the feature set on this is a bit bare bones and lacking in places. Oh, and since they went to the trouble of putting multicoloured lights on here, at least they could have the option to dance and react to the audio. Now, on to positives. Whilst the radio is a pain to tune in, it does get a good signal once you've got it all set up. In fact, I was listening to DAB in the background and I didn't notice I hadn't extended the antenna, and yet the signal was coming through loud and clear. So yeah, good quality radio on this once you get past the interface on it. As far as the sound quality goes, well, it goes loud, it goes clear, and it's got good bass. You can feel it move in the air. It's an overall good quality sound. They called it a portable hi-fi system. I'd agree with that. In fact, it's the best sounding boombox of any that I own. As far as the volume goes, you can turn it all the way up to the top on this and it doesn't distort. And that's because they've clearly limited it. They've made sure that you can't put the amplifier beyond what the speakers are capable of handling. It goes plenty loud enough to annoy all your neighbours if you wanted to, but it's not exactly block rocking beats. You're not going to feel it in your chest. You can feel it move in the air. It's got a good, rich, bassy sound to it, but yeah, it's not like a big PA system. This is still more of a personal device, although one that could fill a garden full of sound. But as far as that sound quality goes compared to my older ones, yeah, I'd rather listen to this. Much clearer, better quality sound than my classic boomboxes, some of which are worth thousands of pounds now. But we're not comparing like with like. I prefer the older boomboxes for what they are, the classics. This isn't my most cherished boombox, it's just the best sounding one, and that is because it's a modern one. They're using modern components. It's not worn out. I'm comparing it against 30, 40-year-old devices with hardened speaker rubbers and crumbling foams and capacitors at the end of their useful life. So yeah, we're not comparing like for like. But yeah, if I wanted to listen to a CD on a boombox, I'd definitely be listening to it on this one. If I wanted a boombox to put on a shelf and look at and occasionally use for playing tapes and things, yeah, I'd use one of the old classics. But the thing that with this being a good modern day boombox is it stands out from the crowd because they haven't cheaped out. Modern ones, they often want to make the cheapest possible device that they could call a boombox, put together the cheapest components, knock it out for a few quid in a supermarket. This has gone the other direction, and it shows, and you can hear it. Just a quick word about price. I know many people would balk at the idea of paying £300 for a boombox. It seems the average person expects that they shouldn't even cost a fifth of that nowadays, and that explains how we ended up with things like this. But I was looking at the price of the mid-90s boomboxes, and the bigger, more powerful models back then went for around £200, and that's the equivalent, with inflation, of £400 nowadays. So really, £300 for this boom blaster seems about right. It's just that very few people are prepared to pay that nowadays. Now, I suspect that this model, when it's discontinued or replaced, whatever JVC come out with next, won't include a CD player and a radio. It'll just be a Bluetooth speaker, like every other Bluetooth speaker. And for me, those aren't boomboxes. I'm sure people will disagree, but for me, a boombox is a device that can play physical media and has a radio on it and has a big, imposing size to it, big old speakers. It's not some Fisher-Price boombox. But yeah, I think we're reaching the end of this era because, you know, I mean, people will be taking CD players off things, and then is it a boombox anymore? I don't know, you make your own mind up. But for me, I'm glad that JVC managed to go out with a boom rather than a whimper. Anyway, that's it for the moment. As always, thanks for watching.